Virginia's 7th Congressional District debate.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Scott Thuman. Tonight we are hosting a debate for the 7th Congressional District in Virginia. Joining us is Republican candidate Derrick Anderson. Democratic candidate Eugene Vindman declined to participate this evening despite a month of working to find a date that worked for both campaigns. We provided multiple offers for him to change his mind, but so far have received no response. Tonight, I'm also joined by 7 News reporter Nick Minock, who is serving as a panelist to ask questions as well this evening. And for tonight's debate rules, there is no opening statement, and Mr. Anderson will have 1 minute to answer each question and then 1 minute to give a closing statement. So let's begin with a topic that affects every single voter out there, and we're talking about the economy and inflation. According to data from earlier this year, the average Virginia household has spent almost $25,000 more on goods and services since January of 2021 due to inflation. For many, it's simply crippling. Tell me specifically, should you earn that seat on Capitol Hill, what would you do to bring down those costs for Virginians?
Yeah, Scott, and before I answer the question, I want to thank you both for having me and giving me the opportunity. You know, it saddens me, unfortunately, that my opponent's not willing to be here on stage tonight to talk about the issues that are affecting the people here in the 7th District. So, you know, I hope that folks, when they go out to the ballot box come these next few weeks in November, they keep that in mind. But look, right now, the economy is crippling folks, right? Right now, we're seeing, and I'll tell you a quick story. There's a little girl by the name of Ella who wrote me a letter and put it in my P.O. box. And there's one line that stuck out to me that said, Derrick, can you fix the government so my mom can buy snacks again? This is a 10-year-old girl. This is a 10-year-old girl who realizes that right now the average Virginia family is paying about $1,100 more a month. About a third of Virginians right now are living paycheck to paycheck, and about 25% of Virginians are delinquent on their credit cards. Why? Because they're putting gas and groceries on their credit cards. Look, we need to get a balanced budget. I'm all for making sure we have a balanced budget. If we don't have a balanced budget, you shouldn't get a paycheck, right? That's how normal life is. We need to make sure taxes are low. We need to make sure we get U.S. Energy back up and running. But again, my opponent, I'd like to ask him tonight, if he was here, whether or not he thinks that he's better off than he was 4 years ago, and I'd say that answer is no.
All right, we're going to turn to Nick Minock for the next 2 questions here. He covers Virginia extensively. He knows the congressional district very well. Nick?
Well, let's talk about Stafford County and Prince William County. This is the heart of the district. A large part of the population lives in those 2 counties. Also Spotsylvania County, where you're from, right? So people in Prince William County and Stafford County, they have seen a noticeable increase in their property tax assessments. And we've also seen renters, they've seen hikes in their rents. So what would you do specifically in Congress to lower costs of living for those residents, especially folks who just can't afford increases in housing costs?
Yeah, and we see right now that taxes are really impacting the folks in the 7th Congressional District, specifically in those areas as well. And we talk about housing right now. Look, the average Virginia family right now, when I was growing up, I grew up in Spotsylvania County. My mom owned several small businesses. I was the guy in the back flipping burgers. But what I can tell you is that right now, the folks that were making $100,000 to $200,000 a year doesn't buy the average home. Why? Because interest rates are high and folks can't buy houses. What I'll tell you is that right now, my opponent, he'd be a rubber stamp for the Harris and Biden policies that got us into this mess. Look, if we talk about taxes, Kamala Harris has been open, and my opponent would support it, was the EV mandate, right? EV mandate that would increase taxes by $1 trillion. The fact that folks can't even afford to live right now, they can't afford another $1 trillion in taxes. In fact, we talk about that EV mandate. It's got a tax credit to it, but that tax credit, we're borrowing from China, and then we're going to spend again on a Chinese-made vehicle, i.e. an EV. So again, they want to take away your gas-powered vehicles and increase your taxes by $1 trillion. And folks in the district just can't afford that right now.
And sir, on immigration, on the subject of immigration, an illegal immigrant who unlawfully entered the U.S. last December was arrested this month in Prince William County for impersonating a law enforcement officer and abducting a teenage girl who was walking to school. So do you think illegal immigrants who commit crimes in the United States should be deported after they're prosecuted by local officials?
Yeah, that bill just came up on the floor of the House just recently, and my opponent and his party voted against it, right? Look, what this comes down to is right now every state is a border state. In fact, we see that Just recently, a few weeks ago, we had 2 illegal immigrants of Jordanian descent attempt to breach the front gate of Marine Corps Base Quantico. Look, this is not just a national security issue. It's a public health and it's a public safety issue. In Virginia, for instance, there's about 5 people a day dying from fentanyl overdoses. It's poisoning our communities. So look, we got to get this immigration issue situated and back under control. So we need to end catch and release. We need to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. We need to make sure we're funding DHS and ICE. I mean, those are common sense solutions, but my opponent and his party, look, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have had the opportunity to fix the border time and time again, but they've chosen not to. In fact, my opponent would be a rubber stamp for those policies. To show you just how much he cares about the immigration policy, he took it off of his website recently. So again, these are common sense solutions and common sense problems. We want to make sure our national security, our public safety, and our public resources are being saved.
Yeah, let me interrupt right there and ask you on the same subject of immigration for specifics regarding deportations, because there's a lot of conjecture over what would happen if former President Trump comes back into office. He's vowed to finish the wall, and he said there will be mass deportations. You worked under President Trump's term. Do you support his plan, or do you think whether or not they have committed some sort of crime, they should be deported, talking about undocumented immigrants, keeping in mind, of course, they play a key role in the job market here in Virginia, also pay close to $700 million in Virginia's state and local tax dollars, according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy.
Yeah, look, you know, we want a tall wall but a wide gate, right? We want people to come here legally. And that's the issue we're having right now. If we look at, you know, I travel the district quite often and talk with all of our local sheriffs and our local police chiefs. And I can tell you that quite often I ask them the #1 issue that they're facing is fentanyl overdoses. It's poisoning our community. So look, I mean, when we talk about the deportation issue and whether or not we build the wall, I recently just took a trip to the wall. And I can tell you, there was an Obama-era wall. President Obama did, in fact, build wall, President Trump wall, and then it stopped. And when I talked to the local sheriff there, he said, that's President Biden's wall. Look, it's common sense, folks. The Biden-Harris administration, they've created this problem. They've created the problem where million upon millions of people have been brought into this country by cartels. And we see young women and young children that have been just missing. A lot of these people we do know, some of them we don't. But again, we have to come up with common sense solutions, and funding ICE and DHS would be the #1 thing we need to get so that we can make sure that our communities are safe. Okay,
I'm going to stop you right there. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Your voice, your vote, Virginia's 7th congressional district debate. We are joined by Republican candidate Derrick Anderson. Democratic candidate Eugene Vindman declined to participate despite a month of working to find a date that his team would agree to. Mr. Anderson, both you and your opponent have extensive military backgrounds. You're a former Green Beret, Eugene Vindman, a former Army colonel. When it comes to conflict, there's intense debate right now about America's role overseas. Currently, the U.S. is sending more troops to the Middle East in response to increased violence between Israel and Hezbollah. There's about 40,000 U.S. troops in that region already. Would you continue sending money, troops, and weaponry to support Israel as it continues its controversial and significantly more deadly fight against Hamas as well?
Yeah, you know, we need to make sure we stand up with our ally, right? Israel is our biggest ally in the Middle East. But the reason why we get into these situations is for failed and weak leadership. Look, so I was a Green Beret. I was an infantry officer first, went to Ranger School, went to Iraq for 15 months as part of the surge before going to the Honor Guard, and then becoming a Green Beret and leading 2 Special Forces teams over the course of 5 deployments, including Afghanistan. I know what war is like. I know what it feels like to have those rounds whizzing by your head. Nobody wants war. But at the end of the day, Israel has a right to defend themselves. And what we're seeing quite often is that the equivocation from the Biden-Harris administration, which caused us to get into the situation that we are. Look, we talk about oil and we talk about the economy, we talk about gas prices. The biggest way that we can, if we want to increase gas prices, is conflict in the Middle East. So again, this goes back to leadership and making sure we're strong in our convictions and making sure that we support our allies when they need it and not equivocating on how much money or any of the equipment that they're going to give, like my opponent and his party has continued to do over and over again.
All right, let's get to Nick. He's got another question. Go ahead, Nick.
Well, Scott, thank you. Mr. Anderson, Prince William County is on track to become the world's largest data center hub. And not everybody's on board. We know in Prince William County they have more than 40 data centers, and it's growing. And 7 News has reported on protests, residents who don't want these in their backyards next to their homes. So the question for you is, do you think that data center expansion should be halted in Prince William County, or do you think more data centers should expand and come to the county?
Yeah, so, the data center issue is something that I think that truly does need to be decided at the local issue, because whether you're in Prince William County or Stafford County, or whether you're in King George and Caroline County, or even further west into Madison and Greene, each county is going to have their own wants and needs from that. And I've got a good relationship with a lot of our local board members and school board members, and quite often it's just about making sure that the county is being taken care of when we bring in this infrastructure, making sure jobs are brought into the district. But again, I think it's a county by county decision, and the counties are going to have to do what they think is best. But at the end of the day, more jobs, more prosperity is always a good thing for our district.
All right. Thank you for that. We are going to go ahead and take another very quick break. We'll be right back with Derrick Anderson and more questions with our debate. With just 6 weeks until Election Day, 7 News is keeping viewers informed with political debates like this one for Virginia's 7th Congressional District. Republican candidate Derrick Anderson is here tonight. Democrat Eugene Vindman declined to participate. So let's get right back to it.
Sure.
Regarding guns, Virginia's Department of Health says it last count had shown, they did this back in 2022, it shows that there were more than 2,700 emergency room visits from gunshots. On average, 3 Virginians die every day over a 6-year span due to firearms. Parents worry about sending their kids to school. Others worry about just being a victim while out living their daily lives. Does this country need more gun control? And would you vote in support of measures like an assault weapons ban or more scrutiny for background checks?
Yeah, Scott, when we talk about this in the Second Amendment, look, we need to have common sense ideas on this, right? What I'll tell you is that what we shouldn't be doing is taking guns or weapons out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. We should be taking it out of the hands of individuals that are criminals and that have severe mental issues. Look, we've seen what's happened over the last few weeks in our local schools, and my heart goes out to those folks. But if we look at what is happening, we knew the FBI had known about some of these individuals prior to, and we know that they had some serious mental issues. So, we need to make sure we're investing in mental health. And look, I'll be quite honest, my opponent and his party have been very open on what they support. Look, they have voted against legislation that would enhance the penalty for criminal activity or crimes that are committed with a weapon. So if you have armed robbery or robbery, they're the same penalty instead of enhancing and deterring. They've voted against mental health funding, and they voted against funding our police, i.e. SROs in our schools. So again, we want to make sure we have SROs, but we have to have common sense solutions to these problems. Okay,
let's get to Nick. He's got another question for you.
All right, so in Spotsylvania County, the Sheriff's Office and the school system announced that this month there were 6 arrests in connection with threats involving schools made over the past 2 weeks, and a 7th was arrested due to a social media threat. And some law enforcement agencies in Northern Virginia tell 7 News that school threats are up dramatically so far this school year. What would you do to ensure the safety of kids at schools?
Yeah, and look, Nick, I went to school in Spotsylvania County. That's where I grew up. I went K through 12. I was in Chancellor, Salem Elementary, Smith Station, Chancellor Middle School, and Cortland High School. So I understand it 100%. And what we need to do is start getting parents involved in their kids and their education. Because that's really what it comes down to, right? Look, my mom was when I was growing up, my mom had several jobs, both her 2 restaurants and her gas station, but she made sure us kids were taken care of and made sure that we had some good discipline. I think that's what we're kind of losing as a society, and a lot of kids being focused on social media. Again, getting back to the basics, making sure that parents are involved in their kids' education is really where we can really get good work done there and make sure that our schools are safe.
When it comes to violent crimes, they're continuing to go up in Prince William County. At the same time, that department faces a shortage of officers, of staff. Is there something that you think Congress should do to help combat violent crimes and also help law enforcement agencies get to full staffing?
Yeah, so, I've been very supportive of our local law enforcement. And look, I mentioned previously that I've sat down with a lot of our local police departments, our police chiefs, our sheriff's office, and talked about a lot of the needs and the wants that they need. Because, look, I mean, our local counties and their boards of supervisors are doing a phenomenal job at trying to make sure that our sheriff's offices are funded, but there's just certain things that they're not able to get. So as a member of Congress, I want to make sure that I keep an eye out for those things that we can get, whether they be grants or what have you, for our local law enforcement to keep our community safe. And let's take a step back, too. We talk about the border and the issues that are affecting us here. Nick, you mentioned just recently about what's going on in Prince William County. We've seen how the border and this illegal immigration crisis has really impacted the Commonwealth of Virginia. And here in the 7th District, I talk with the sheriffs, and we see the criminal activity along I-95 because it's easy for these cartels and these gangs to drop stuff off along I-95, whether it be weapons, whether it be drugs or what have you. But again, we gotta clean this up, and making sure we have our law enforcement's back is this first step. All
right, we're going to pause right there. We're going to take one more final quick break here, and then we'll be right back with our final questions for Mr. Anderson. We are now in our final segment of questions tonight for Republican candidate for Virginia's 7th Congressional District, Derrick Anderson. His opponent, Democrat Eugene Vindman, declined to participate. Mr. Anderson, earlier this year, Virginia lawmakers decisively voted down a bill that would have instituted a near total abortion ban. It was an 8-0 bipartisan vote. Your opponent has vowed to restore the protections of Roe. Meanwhile, Governor Glenn Youngkin has supported a ban on abortions after 15 weeks with exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Where do you fall on this issue, and what parameters would you choose?
Yeah, look, Scott, we need to start thinking about this issue with compassion. Right, my mom, she was 18 years old when she had me. I'm glad my mom had me, and she's glad that she had me. Look, it's pretty clear the Dobbs decision gave this back to the states to make the decisions for the states. And Virginia, as you mentioned, has spoken on this. But what I want to address here more specifically is where I stand on it, because my opponent has lied time and time again about this. Look, I've been very open in where I stand, and I don't want to federalize this issue, so I do not support a national ban on abortion. I support IVF, and I support over-the-counter contraceptives. But again, my opponent has continued to lie about this issue and putting words in my mouth, which is just not good. At the end of the day, we need to have compassion and consensus and common sense with this issue and stop being divisive. And again, my opponent, he'll continue this divisiveness because he's distracting from the issues, because he can't talk about things like the economy or the border or veterans.
All right. Let's get back to Nick for one more question. Nick?
So that's a hot topic. Another one is transportation. And the I-95 corridor is in the center of Virginia's 7th Congressional District. Many people who live in the district are very familiar with heavy traffic on I-95, commuting to work, also coming home. So how would you alleviate transportation headaches in your district if you were elected to Congress?
Yeah, I mean, 13% of our district, roughly, Nick, is commuters, right? Folks that travel to and from Washington, D.C. or Northern Virginia, or even into Richmond. I can tell you very frankly that I get the phone calls from my mom every single day because she's a real estate agent, and she's the one that has to leave very early or later in the evening or in the morning or get back later in the evening, and she always uses that time to give me a call, to give me an update on every single thing that's going on in her life. So again, look, the issue with I-95 is really impacts everyone. And so when we're looking at federal funding and we start talking about infrastructure, what I want to make sure as the next member of Congress is to make sure that when federal funding is being dispersed across the nation, that it comes here to the Commonwealth of Virginia and specifically to the 7th Congressional District. Because anyone that's watching right now, Nick and Scott, knows that when you get up I-95 in the 7th Congressional District, that's usually where traffic ends up. And I want to be that champion for infrastructure in our district, whether it be roads, bridges, or highways.
All right, Mr. Anderson, you'll have just 30 seconds to answer this one, so shorter time here. What makes you the best candidate for this seat?
Yeah, so as someone that's from Spotsylvania County that understands what people are dealing with every single day, that's why. I think that's someone who's a veteran, someone who's fought for our country overseas. As I say to folks, look, if you want someone to fight for you in Washington, D.C., you need someone that is you. It's one of you. And I've had that opportunity, and my opponent, unfortunately, he's not from here. In fact, he's not from here, and he's not even willing to get on stage to talk to the people of the 7th District about the issues that are impacting them every single day, whereas I'm running around our district every single day talking to folks about the issues impacting them, like the economy and the border.
Well, and you do now have your one final minute for a closing statement.
Look, my name is Derrick Anderson. I'm from Spotsylvania County. I grew up in the district. I was the guy in the back of my mom's restaurant flipping burgers when I was growing up. I went to Cortland High School before I went to Virginia Tech on an ROTC scholarship, becoming the first person in my family to graduate from college. I joined the Army. I was an infantry officer, went to Ranger School, went to Iraq for 15 months as part of the surge. I went to the Honor Guard in Arlington National Cemetery before becoming a Green Beret, where I did 5 deployments overseas, including Afghanistan. I went to law school and clerked for 2 federal judges. I have lived the American dream. I got into this race after seeing what had happened in Afghanistan. I lost 5 of my guys in Afghanistan, so as you can imagine, I wanted to do something and serve in a new capacity, and that's why I'm running for Congress. I'm running for Congress for the people in the 7th District, like my mom and my cousins. Look, if you want to, I'm a common sense kind of guy. If you want to make sure it's more affordable to live and make sure our communities are safe and we take care of veterans, I'm the guy. So again, it'd be an honor to represent the 7th Congressional District, the district that raised me.
Mr. Anderson, thank you so much. A couple of important dates quickly to remind you about in Virginia. The deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot is Friday, October 25th, and the last day of in-person early voting is Saturday,